name is Garrett Veihl, Garrett Wayne, V as in Victor, Eihl.
And where and when were you born?
I was born in Muskegon, Michigan, November 23rd, 1951, 8:13 a.m.
What was your early childhood like in Muskegon?
I guess, when you grow up, it's pretty much like everybody else in your neighborhood, so you don't think what it's like until you get older. I lived in a depressed neighborhood. My father was unemployed most of the time. We were raised pretty much on welfare and ADC. But everybody else in our neighborhood lived the same way, so it wasn't anything you thought about until you got older and you realized that you didn't have what a lot of other people did, so it wasn't a big deal.
So your family, you had brothers and sisters?
There's 7 of us. 2 girls, and then 5 boys came along after the 2 girls. My mother had all 7 kids in less than 8 years. No multiple births.
What was your early schooling like?
My early schooling, I went to Phillips Elementary School, which is on East Broadway. I went there from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. It was basic small classrooms, 30 kids to a classroom. Went from kindergarten through 8th grade with pretty much the same kids in my homeroom. Just every year we might have 1 or 2 leave or new ones come in.
And high school?
High school, in 1965, we moved to Grand Haven, and I graduated from Grand Haven Senior High School on Cutler Street.
Now, 65, by that time, you're old enough to hear the radio, see the television. Did you have television?
Yeah, we always had television. Sometimes my dad's priorities were in the wrong place.
So were you aware that things were going on in the world around you outside of Muskegon, outside of Grand Haven?
Well, most definitely. I was at an age when the Nixon-Kennedy election was going on. Matter of fact, I remember I used to go, Kennedy, he's our man, Nixon's for the garbage can. When we were in school, the Weekly Reader always covered the elections when you're going through school. I'll never forget the day of the Kennedy assassination, because the principal turned the radio on and broadcasted over the 1MC through the school when we were kids. And I remember, and this might seem a little strange, but I was at an age where I didn't realize the importance of the President of the United States. I knew who the President was, but to me it was somebody I seen on television I didn't know, so he wasn't that big a deal. And the 2 days before he was assassinated, my grandfather passed away. And when I come to school, none of the kids in the school, they all personally knew my grandfather, but they had no reaction to it. But when Kennedy was assassinated, some of the kids were crying, and I'm going, what the hey? You knew my grandpa, and it didn't register, but it just was the importance, and I didn't grasp it at that time.
Now, you had older brothers?
I have 2 older brothers.
Okay. Tell me about the view of the military within your family. Was your father a veteran?
My father was a veteran. My father was in the Navy. He was a gunner's mate on merchant ships during World War II. He was if I remember correctly, he was involved in the Normandy landing, taking supplies over there and stuff. My father suffered from what we call PTSD nowadays, but back then they just called it some other thing. I can't remember what they called it. And because when the merchant ships would leave New York, they'd leave in a convoy, and the wolf packs, I think is what they called the German submarine units, would sink one of the boats, and then the sailors were in the water screaming, the people were screaming for help. My dad was a great swimmer, and he knew he could go in and save people, but the ship couldn't stop to save him, and that's what haunted my dad. It haunted him, and this was the demons that he had the rest of his life.
So the Vietnam War, while you were in high school, was escalating.
Yes.
And what impact did that have on your family?
Well, in I think 67 or 68, my oldest brother Larry enlisted and went in. In 68, he went over to Vietnam. We were, I guess you would say, a pro-military family, because our father raised us that every male should serve at least one enlistment into the military. So my two older brothers both enlisted. My two older brothers both quit school. That's part of the way we were living, because of the economy and my dad's demons, and my dad was an alcoholic, and that kind of drove the kids out of the house. So that going into the military was also an opportunity to change our lives. And my brother Larry, the one that went in first, he ended up doing a 20-year career in the Army. And Randy, my next brother, he was in for a 2-year hitch and did a tour in Vietnam and came home. Larry did 2 tours in Vietnam. And he also had PTSD all the way up until the day he died. He used to get up and patrol the perimeter of his property his whole life and stuff.
So when they got back, did that have any effect on you in terms of your decision about what you were going to do?
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going in the Army, but I always, I always did the opposite of my 2 older brothers. Out of the 7 kids, I'm the only one that graduated from high school on time. Everybody else went back and got GEDs later in life. I always wanted to be in the Navy, probably because my dad talked about the Navy and like that there. But I knew I was going to go into the branch of service one time. Matter of fact, at Grand Haven, when I was in 9th grade, they had a class called Guidance in Economics. It was a facilitated classroom. You had 2 teachers. One covered the economics, one covered the guidance. And we had to plan our lives out a little bit. We had to, you got a husband and wife team, you plan a house, you plan what type of automobile, what type of job you're going to have. And I remember planning that I was going to graduate from high school, go into the military, do my 4-year hitch, come out, further my education, work in a shop somewhere, and not even start to look for myself to have a family till I was 27. It didn't work out that way, but that was how I planned it when I was in 9th grade.
So when did you decide then that you were going to join the Navy? Or did you get a draft card?
Oh, I got a draft card. I can't remember what my number was, but it was real high. I graduated at 17 years old. I wanted to go in right then and there, but my mom and dad said, no, your 2 brothers are in. You have to wait till you're 18 because we're not going to give the go-ahead. So I'm 17. I can't get a decent job because I'm not 18, and you have to be 18 to be able to get a job in a shop where you're working with equipment where you may get hurt, unless you're in co-op at school, which my younger brother was, and he got to work, which another thing. But anyway, so I worked at a gas station, in a bakery, and then when I turned 18, July of 1970, I went and enlisted in the Navy with 3 of my buddies, the buddy system. And I wanted to go in right now, but the recruiter, Chief Sisti, said, you're not going for 6 months. So you're going to be in what's called the delayed entry program. You're going to be a reservist for 6 months, then you'll go active in January. And I says, but I want to go now. He goes, no, I got a waiting list. Everybody wants to go in the Navy or Air Force right now. So I had to wait, and then January 4th of 1971, I went active duty and went over to Great Lakes, Illinois for boot camp.
So you're 18, your first time away from home?
In a sense, for a long period of time, I spent the night over people's houses and stuff like that, but it's the first time I've ever been away for any length of time.
And you went with your 2 buddies?
2 of them went into boot camp with me, yes.
Okay, so you actually had 2 people you actually knew?
Right, one was from Spring Lake and one was from Grand Haven.
Okay.
2 guys I've worked with in the past and stuff too.
Okay. So walk us through you already went through the recruitment part, you had to delay it for 6 months. Now, you got on a bus, you got on a train?
We got on a bus. What we did, we got on a bus, went to Detroit to the old AFI station. Then they loaded us up on a bus and they took us to Great Lakes, Illinois. In the wee hours of the morning, we got out at Camp Berry, and you're getting off the bus, and right then and there, it starts boot camp. Your worms, your maggots, and everything else, which I laughed at. But what was really funny about boot camp, because they like the whole thing about boot camp is break you down to build you up and stuff like that. And their way of breaking you down was try to say things to put you down and yell at you. Well, I grew up with that all the time, so it didn't faze me, kind of in it one ear and out the other ear. Sometimes I would laugh, and that would even make it worse because they'd get mad because I was laughing at them. But when you grow up that way, you kind of, you're not bothering me. But I wanted to be in the service, so it didn't bother me either.
So what were the first things you had to do in boot camp? I mean, you get the vision, of course, the guy yelling at you and all that.
Okay,
What did you actually have to do?
the first thing you go in there, of course, back in the 60s, they're going to cut all that long hair off your head and make you bald. I'm suffering for that now. But they shave your head. First day you go and you get fitted for uniforms that are too big and go through that there. And then they just start off with the learning how to do the 16-count manual arms and start being taught how to act military, how to yes sir, no sir, left, right, put your thumb into your hand when you salute. They just start from day one off to the march everywhere you go and then start teaching you about military history and how to act.
How good physically were you at that time?
I was good physical shape.
Okay, so you didn't really have a problem with push-ups and
No, I didn't have anything, no problem with the physical parts of it.
So during this period of time, your frame of mind, you wanted to be in the military, you knew that you had to go through all this because people washed out.
Well, that, and I also had an older cousin who was career Navy, and he gave me a lot of heads up before I went into boot camp. He told me they're going to psychologically do that. And he used to go out and teach people survival in the wild and stuff. So he was telling me they would try to do this psychological type stuff and like that there. So, when you get a little bit of a heads up, you can kind of, okay, I can handle this.
So unless there were some really specific things that happened during that period of time you want to talk about, what was the process of getting out?
Okay, things that happened there, I'll tell you something happened to some other people. We had a young guy that sent home a blown up story about his heroism while we were in boot camp. He wanted to impress his girlfriend and went and told him that while we were at the swimming. And they teach you how to go into the water and you imagine you got the water on fire from a flood, a ship that's been hit. And you go up, you push like this, and you push the water away to get air and then go back down. Well, he sends home and tells his girlfriend that guys got trapped in it and they panicked and he jumped in the water and saved them and everything else. And her dad happened to be a senator in New York, so he starts a Senate investigation and this what's going on. So what they do is they send a letter to the Great Lakes, Illinois, to the captain of the base. The captain of the base hits about 180-degree temperature from that one, so he goes. Everything goes downhill. Next thing you know, our company commander's calling this guy into the room, and then how he handles that, because the letter's sent back to the company commander. The company commander makes this guy stand on top of a table in the barracks in front of the other 60-some guys in boot camp and makes him read this letter he sent his girlfriend. And we're all sitting there, boy, that guy full of crap. And then,
So did some of the guys not make it?
Yeah, you always have, in every school you go to, you have some guys that usually don't make it and drop out. Matter of fact, that guy ended up, I don't know if he ever made it through, but he ended up being pulled out of our company later on for other things that he just, that's another thing what boot camp's for. They can catch you for your psychological ability to perform. Can you handle working in tight spaces with people? How do you get along with other people? The military life's not meant for everybody. It's.
So once you completed that, you must have felt pretty good that you got out, you made it.
Yeah.
So what was the next step?
The next step was to go to, while we're there, they pick what rating you're going to be. And fortunately, I had very good on all my test scores and stuff, so they wanted to ask me if I wanted to be a machinist, be a mechanic. No, I don't want to be a mechanic. I want to be a cook. No, how about electrician? No, I want to be a cook. And the guy goes, well, we don't want you to be a cook. I says, well, I'm going to be a cook. He goes, no, we're going to make you something else. I go, no, you're not, because my contract says that I get a school of my choice because I'm a high school graduate and I want to be a cook. I've always cooked when I was a kid. I always loved being a cook. Hindsight being 2020, I should have took one of the other rates, but I became a cook because that's what I wanted to be. And so my next place was going to commissary A school in San Diego, California.
Not a bad place to go.
Right.
So what was San Diego like? What'd you have to do?
All that was, you don't do any marching anymore. You just go to class and learn about food service, doing the proper math for food service and how to cook and sanitation and all of the scientific stuff that goes into it, preventing people from getting infections and poison, botulism, and all that type stuff. And I remember talking to a guy from Berkeley, California, and he was talking about the ocean, and I still hadn't seen the ocean yet, because we've landed there and I didn't see it when we flew in. And I'm talking about Lake Michigan, and he's saying, well, the ocean's a lot bigger than Lake Michigan. And I says, well, I know it's bigger than Lake Michigan. I says, but Lake Michigan's real big. And he goes, well, you could see across Lake Michigan. And I says, you got good eyes if you can see across Lake Michigan. And so we go down to the ocean at Ocean Beach there, and I look at it and I go, looks just like Lake Michigan, just a different color water to me. And he goes, no, it doesn't look out there. And I looked, and I says, matter of fact, Lake Michigan's rougher than this most of the time. And then because we went back to class, and he asked one of the instructors, and the guy was from Wisconsin, he goes, oh, yeah, those Great Lakes are rougher on sailing than on the ocean.
That's right. Did you say Ocean Side or Ocean Beach?
Maybe it was Ocean Side. I'm not real good with
That's where the Navy base is, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I actually lived in Ocean Beach, and my mom lived in Ocean Side, and I
Okay.
had a military presence within Ocean Side.
All I know is we went down to the beach, and there was caves and stuff, and we played around in
Yeah.
there a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, it's
We're going back a few years now.
I know.
Yeah, and that's the only time I was in California for 8 weeks, and then I've never went back to California.
So from that, you graduate from that school, is that the idea?
Okay, yeah, you graduate from that school, A school, then they give you orders. And then when we got our orders to go to our ships, there was a guy that was in my class with me, and he had orders to a ship that was out of Long Beach. I'm going to a minesweeper out of Charleston, South Carolina. This guy didn't want to go to Long Beach because he was pretty sure if he was going to a ship on Long Beach, he was going to Vietnam. You could have been on a ship in Norfolk and still went to Vietnam. That's not how they decide, but in his mind, he was sure he was going to go to Vietnam, and he did not want to go to Vietnam. So he went to the chaplain, because he asked me if I would trade orders with him, which you can do. And I said, nope, I'm taking the orders I got. And he offered me all the travel pay and everything else. He's trying to entice me, and I still wouldn't do it. So when I wouldn't do it, he went to the chaplain. And I'm in class, and I get a note I have to go see the chaplain, which really bothered me because at the time I knew my dad was terminally ill. You know, we thought he was going to go then, so I'm thinking I'm going to the chaplain, he's going to tell me my dad kicked the bucket. But that isn't what it was. Here's this guy, he's sitting there, all teary-eyed, and the chaplain goes to me and says, why won't you trade this man orders? I says, because the Navy gave me these orders. They want me to go there, and they want him to go there. Are you afraid to go to Vietnam? I'm not afraid to go do anything I'm told to do by my superiors, but this is what they told me. But I'm not going to go there if I don't have to. And he goes, can you give me one good reason other than that, than why you wouldn't go? Why you won't trade him orders? So I'm thinking. And I go, well, chaplain, the Lord works in mysterious ways. If he wanted me to go, he'd have seen to it I got those orders. And he gave me a look of, you son of... But because then I ended up going, again, this is a case where I probably should have swapped orders, because once I got on the minesweeper, I found out those little ships like a minesweeper aren't the type ship to be out to sea on. They are rough.
So you're now a cook on a minesweeper, is that the idea?
Yep, I'm a E3 cook.
Okay. And when you reported to the ship, or actually it's a ship or a boat?
It's a ship. It's a minesweeper.
Okay, minesweeper's a ship. How many people are on it?
45.
Okay, and it's run by a captain or a?
Well, everybody on a ship is a captain. You know, it's called the captain, but his pay grade was lieutenant, and he picked up lieutenant commander while we were there, because it's a small ship. You know, and whenever you have a CO of a ship, he's called captain. You know, see, that's the thing that confuses a lot of people with the Navy, because if you're an 06, you're a captain. No matter what you're doing, you're still a captain because that's the pay grade. But then, so yeah.
So what were your duties? I mean, obviously you were a cook, but what were your duties on that?
Basically just being a cook, you know, making sure the galley's clean, the mess decks is clean, preparing 3 meals a day when we're at sea, making sure we make mid-rats also.
You had people working with you?
No, on a ship that size, you have 1 cook in the galley working, and you have a couple mess cooks doing cleaning pots and pans and stuff like that. The bad part about that is when we're at sea, I usually wasn't in the galley. I was usually in my rack because I have chronic seasickness.
And you joined the Navy?
I didn't know I had chronic seasickness. Hadn't been to sea. We went to sea for 11 days one time, and I lost 14 pounds. They had to carry me off because I was having cramps and stuff from throwing up so much and stuff. So I got.
Tell me you weren't teased by people. The cook is sick of his own food.
No, I didn't get teased about that. They're ironic. No. The other cook on board was mad because if I couldn't work, he had to work my shift too, which really, in a way, he wasn't too mad about it because he's at sea anyway. So when we're in port, I got to make up the days he worked for me. Yeah. So he got to go out on the beach more often. And he was a second class, so he left.
While you were there, we're looking at this 71, right? Yeah, 71, roughly this.
I checked on board there. I can't remember the exact date, but like in the summertime, sometime in the summertime of 71, and I got off March, I think, 72 and 72 because of the chronic seasickness. Yeah. And one thing why I was on the minesweeper, we went out on what was going to be a daily operation out into the mine land. They got out to practice sweeping mines, and we were only supposed to be out for like 8 hours and come back in that night. And no more did we get outside past the jetties and everything else, and we got a radio message to steam full speed ahead down to Cape Canaveral, or Cape Kennedy, depending on what you want to call it. And I'm not exactly sure what day they did, but they launched something off, and it went down in the drink right there, and they had Russian trawlers trying to see if they could find it. So they sent the minesweeper down there because the minesweeper had what was known as the Squeaky 14 sonar, and we'd go in real shallow water, and we were trying to retrieve it. And being a cook, I wasn't too involved in all that stuff, but also being a cook, I'm around the wardroom and I'm hearing all the talk, and we're supposed to be looking for something about the size of a 55-gallon drum. And they figured it would take a week to 10 days to find it. We found it in a matter of hours. So the Air Force and everybody in NASA, everybody, hey, let's leave them here and keep finding other stuff. So we were there, I think, for 2 weeks. And then when we left, other minesweepers came and took our place because they've been losing stuff there since 1957. So it was retrieving a lot of stuff that they could probably check and get data off of and stuff.
Were you aware, either through radio or did you get newspapers? Did you know what was going on in the world around you at that time?
When we're at sea?
Yeah.
No, unless something comes across and the command lets us know about what it is. It's not like it is today. Yeah, no.
Because Vietnam was still going on.
Yes.
But there was this point where it was starting to level off.
Right.
You really didn't have any idea about what was actually going on out there.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, my mind was on doing my job and stuff like that, so I didn't really dwell too much about that.
Did you keep in contact with family through phone calls or letters or anything?
Letters. Matter of fact, when I went in the Navy, the first 6 months I wasn't married. I got married 6 months after I was in. And at the time I had my wife living in Charleston with me and stuff. 19 and 18-year-olds trying to start a life together and like that there. So, yeah.
Did she have any comments about your ability to cook?
I still help her to this day.
So from San Diego's, you said you were on the into Charleston, South Carolina after that, right?
Right.
71 to 72?
Yeah, on a U.S.S Vital MSO 474.
And what was that?
That's the minesweeper.
So, okay, all right. So then from there, you then moved on from 72, as I understand, to 77 to Jacksonville, Florida?
Yes, I went
What
to
was
a
that
I went to a patrol squadron, VP squadron, which was an air squadron, anti-submarine. Have you ever seen the big weather plane that goes into the hurricanes? It's got that big dome on it. Well, take the dome off, and that's what a P3 looks like. Okay, and then what they do, they drop sonobuoys into the water and try to track submarines.
So you're actually flying now?
No,
Oh.
I'm still a cook.
Okay.
One thing about the military and all branches of everybody eats. So I would be TAD to a galley wherever we're at. Like we're in Jacksonville, I'm TAD to building 110, which was, I think that was the number of the building. Anyway, no, that was a hangar. I'm at the galley cooking for the base. And then when we deployed, I'd get on a stretch 8, go to wherever we're being deployed to, and I'd cook at the galley at that base.
What's a TAD?
Temporary assignment of duty.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so you're on land
Yes.
in a commissary or?
Well, that came along later, but yes, in a galley.
Okay.
Or
For people who don't know, I
Oh,
know what
ga-
you're
ga-
talking
yeah,
about, but, okay,
a cafeteria.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And about how many people were you cooking for?
Well, they also had the air schools, training schools there, so we would be cooking for right around 700 people a meal.
And so obviously not by yourself.
No, we had large numbers. We had, let me think, I think it was 12 80-gallon steam jacketed kettles. We had a great big huge bake oven, a rotisserie oven with, I think it had 8 shelves in it. And no, we're cooking for a lot of people.
So these are not sea rations you're popping open, right?
Oh, no, never had to eat sea rations in the 20-plus years I was in the Navy. We're cooking regular roast beef dinners, mashed potatoes, vegetables. We had a full going bake shop in the back. We had a butcher shop cutting the meat up right there and everything.
That's one of the things my dad told me, was that he had joined the Navy because his father joined the Navy, my grandfather. But he said the other reason was because you weren't gonna have to eat canned foods.
Right. No, there was a lot of cooking
Wow,
going
good
on.
food, okay. What were the kind of things that you heard as people were they walking through the line? You weren't serving though, right? You were cooking, but
Sometimes I would be serving too. You'd be up out there helping serve. Usually when we're on, like in Jacksonville, we had civilian employees that would do a lot of the serving and stuff. But you usually have at least one cook behind the line assisting. And usually the people were quite happy. You're always going to have somebody that's disgruntled, not liking it. But usually it was okay.